Hi, I'm Alex, this is Pucks and Paperbacks, and this week I'm reading trans books. I wanted to read some trans books that were on my radar, and since it's March, and March 31st is Trans Day of Visibility, I thought, why don't I make a reading vlog where I complete some prompts from a trans reading challenge and just share some books that I've been looking forward to reading. If you're new here, I'm a trans man, and I love to uplift queer and trans books on my channel. So I figured this week I would try to complete some prompts off the Trans Book Bingo and Trans Reading Challenge created by my friend Rhys over at Read with Rhys. If you like my content and you want to support more trans man and trans masc people in the book community, I highly recommend Rhys. He does great work. He has fantastic recommendations, and I love what he does over on Instagram. I will have him linked down below. Definitely try to participate in this challenge if you like challenges. I also mentioned this in my reading challenge video that I did, so I'll link that above. But I think it is very important to support trans creators, and it truly infuriates me every single year that the support doesn't feel like it's there. The Trans Rights Readathon comes around and everybody starts supporting, but usually it just ends there. I have seen that happen to me over the last couple years since I've come out as trans, and it's sucks. Like, it's very disheartening, and I feel like the book community can do so much more to support and watch our videos because I feel like it doesn't really happen. I am just one trans person, but that's just how my experience has been, and it sucks. I have talked to other trans people in the community who feel the same way, and we can tell that you're only subscribing to say that you subscribe to a trans person. So if you want to do the work and actually support us, I have linked it down below, some mutual aid forums to GoFundMes to help people with their top surgeries. There are also ways to donate to trans organizations. We need your support now more than ever, and just clicking the follow or subscribe button is not enough. You need to be helping us in the long term. So I appreciate everybody that does support my content. I appreciate it so much. I think the community can do better. That's just my 2 cents. Highly recommend to go check out Rhys. He has a master list of trans book recommendations. He is fantastic, and I can't wait to participate more in his reading challenge. This is a yearly reading challenge with prompts that correlate to trans books, and there's a book bingo, so I'm gonna try to complete as many as I can this week. Here are the prompts that I'm trying to complete in this video. The first prompt is a graphic novel with a trans character, and I'm going to read Lunar Boy. I just started it and I'm enjoying it so far. A book with a BIPOC trans main character or author. I'm going to read the memoir Horse Barbie. I'm so excited to read this. And a T for T romance. I am finally going to read Meet Cute Diary by Emery Lee. Honestly, this book inspired this whole entire video. Let's get reading. I just finished up Lunar Boy and I really enjoyed it. This is a sci-fi graphic novel set in an Indonesian-like world. I'm actually going to link my friend Alex's review down below because I thought it was excellent. So we are following Indu, who is a trans boy, and he is known as Lunar Boy. He was adopted by a family who found him on the moon, and now he's living in New Earth. He has to learn a new language, he's going to school, and he's really struggling. It talks about culture shock, language barrier. Mostly the characters speak Filipino or Indonesian languages. Some are translated and some are not. We have a full cast of queer and trans characters, which I love. Indu is a trans boy. We meet a bisexual trans woman. There is pan-romantic rap. There's a non-binary person. For an assignment at school, Indu is paired with a pen pal who lives in a different world. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but they are non-binary, and both of them talk about transness. But Indu starts to fall for them. However, Indu is not having a great time on New Earth. He's having some familial issues as his brother is having issues with him, and he just feels like a burden and it's just not working out here. So he pleads to go back home to the moon, and he can only do that when New Year's comes around. So in preparation for that, he tries to make the best of New Earth, but in turn, he realizes that he doesn't want to leave. He starts to appreciate New Earth, and he connects with his community, especially the queer community, more. There's so many great passages about community, which I loved. I just loved how queer this was and how normalized transness and queerness is. However, there are some homophobic and transphobic language. However, it is challenged. There is very minor transphobia. There's some misgendering, content warnings for grief, loss of a parent, and like I said, there's some minor transphobia. But I really enjoyed this. It's very heartwarming, and I thought the illustrations were great. It was also nice to just read a sci-fi again because I haven't read sci-fi in a while. This had this sci-fi where it's talking about astronomy, as we have New Earth, the moon, and things like that. I really enjoyed this, and now I've completed the prompt to read a graphic novel with a trans main character. Hi, it's Saturday. I swear I own other shirts, but this is my favorite hockey player and favorite shirt at the moment, so you're just gonna have to bear with me. I am deep into a hyperfixation. In terms of reading, I started Horse Barbie yesterday on sprints. Every Friday, I've been trying to do reading sprints on my channel, so I will link the next live stream down below. You're probably going to be seeing this Thursday, so it's going to be tomorrow on my channel if all goes well, because I'm not sure what's going to happen this week, but I will update you accordingly. But it's been really fun, and I read a lot of Horse Barbie yesterday. On sprints, I believe I got to 20%, and then afterward I played some Sims, and I'm 53% in on 2x speed. I thought 2x speed would be too much, but it's actually perfect. The author is narrating it, which is great. So Horse Barbie is a memoir from Geena Rocero, and she is a trans woman from the Philippines, and this is so fascinating to me. She talks about being a trans beauty pageant queen in the Philippines and how gender and transness is, I don't want to say accepted more over there, but it sort of is. Obviously, the LGBT laws and things are different, whereas she says she wouldn't be able to change her name or her gender marker, but she meets a group of trans women in the Philippines who are beauty pageant queens, and she gets into this. I just love how much trans joy we're getting here. Her parents are accepting. It is very heavy. It does talk about transphobia, grief, death of a parent, and there is some colorism and racism going on. It also talks about Catholicism and some of the religious trauma that she has to unpack, and she talks about having to dismantle a lot of her thinking. And as somebody who grew up in the Catholic Church, I really appreciate that. I just think this is really well written. I wish I had the physical copy because there's so many quotes that I am thinking about and would like to highlight, so definitely would like to get myself a copy of this. I'm really loving it. It's 1 o'clock and there's some afternoon hockey on, so tonight I will be reading more of Horse Barbie. I don't know if I'll get to finish it today, hopefully by tomorrow, and then I will start to read Meet Cute Diary. So I figured I would update you because I'm loving this book so much, and I'm already at 53%. I'm gonna go watch hockey, and I will come back with my final thoughts on Horse Barbie. Hi, last night I finished Horse Barbie, and I loved it. Honestly, I think this is one of my new favorite memoirs and probably one of my best books of the year. Let's talk about it because there's a lot going on in this book. Geena Rocero is a Filipino trans woman, beauty pageant queen, and model. This talks about her life from the 90s to the early 2000s. I believe she may stop around 2014. So we're going through many periods of time. There's a lot that goes on here. It is mixed with trans joy, and I would say this is a very joyous memoir. However, it talks a lot about being stealth. When Geena leaves the Philippines and immigrates to America, she is faced with having to go back in the closet and be more stealth, and she doesn't tell anybody she's trans, even her closest friends. And I really enjoyed learning about the difference between the US and the Philippines, because she ends up joining a group of trans women who are beauty pageant queens in the Philippines, and they have a different view of gender there. She talks about how the language doesn't even have a word for trans woman, and Geena does so much good. I would say this is a resilient memoir, but also I think she is an underlooked person in history. I actually am using this for my Pop Sugar Reading Challenge this year. One of the prompts is to read about a underlooked woman in history, and I would say Geena is that. I can't believe I haven't heard about her before, because she has done so much amazing work for the trans community, especially for trans women. When she comes out in a TED Talk, which I'll link down below, she is free, and she also helps so many trans women in the Philippines. She goes to the Philippines and she teaches them and tells them that trans is power, and it's a powerful word, and it's not meant to be used as a negative term anymore. And that is so freeing for these women. It touched me so much. I am so glad I read this. However, it is pretty heavy at times. I have a whole list of trigger warnings. I'll link my Storygraph review down below where I have all the trigger warnings, but I'll also try and put them on the screen because there's so much. There's grief, there's death. It does talk about the murder of trans women. She talks about some experiences of her being afraid of men, and there are some experiences where men learn that she's trans, and they're not physically abusive, but they are verbally abusive and upset. So big trigger warning for that. I will say this can be a triggering book. There's a lot of heavy content, but it also has a lot of joy. Like I said, Geena is lucky to have two parents who are accepting of her. This shows how privileged and important it can be for trans people to be stealth in any industry and just in the world in general. It's a form of protection and safety for many people, and I think that's highlighted here, especially because it talks about the modeling industry, especially in the early 2000s, of how she was so afraid to come out and a lot of the obstacles that she had. I just think this was so incredible. I know, I feel like I'm not really saying as much. I thought this was so great, and the epilogue had me in tears. I'm actually going to play the end of the epilogue because I think it's so important.
Letting them ask me questions, joking around with them, and listening to them talk about their own dreams. Here they are, ages 18 through 21, seeing a proud immigrant trans woman of color from the Philippines speaking proudly about her journey, unafraid to share what she's experienced. Many students ask me how I keep my drive and my optimism, because I'm still very much an optimist. I answer by telling them about growing up in the Philippines, where trans people have mainstream visibility but no political recognition. In a way, that's the reality many on the right are trying to bring about in the United States. A future where people like me are on TV and in magazines, but not teaching in schools or using public bathrooms. I tell them that visibility is not the one and only answer, that we need equity and justice too, and that the only way to survive while we push for change is to lean on one another. Because what enabled me to survive in the Philippines, and not just survive, but imagine bigger things, was the support I had from Tiger Lily and my pageant family, who nurtured me and cheered me on for so long even after I moved away. To this day, they all still call me Horse Barbie. Their stories, the stories of my trans ancestors, are always there in my mind, whispers passed down through generations. It's these whispers that I carried with me across an ocean, then a country, and ultimately around the world. Advice from Tiger Lily, the story of Tula, and the legacy of the beautiful Babaylans, my pre-colonial predecessors, they all live with me now. Our stories can soothe with an almost meditative gentleness, and if we can just hang on long enough, they will one day reshape our reality. There is power in queer people recognizing and amplifying and documenting one another's voices, finding happiness among one another, and celebrating ourselves. That's why, when young queer and trans people ask me about our nightmarish present, I don't tell them your problems will go away. I tell them that there is healing to be found in searching for joy, in processing your resentment for a world that rejects you, in accepting that all of being alive, the good, the bad, and the hateful, is part of a journey you don't get to do over. It will be difficult. It will be sad. I have the scars to prove it. But we will have one another, and you will have you. Because no matter how scared you might feel, whether you're a trans kid or a 90-year-old grandma, you have one of the most powerful things a person can wield: a story. A story worth sharing. A story worth living. You have a place in this vast tapestry of interconnected experience. Ecstasy and pain and romance and dream-making all belong to you just as much as they do to anyone else. Find your place among these feelings. Dig deeper. Get hurt and keep going. I am chapters that are still unwritten, and so are you.
Isn't that incredible? I don't read many trans memoirs that have joy, so I was really surprised and happy about this. I feel like most of the time trans memoirs are for cis people, and this was for trans people. I believe it can be for cis people as well. I just think Geena is such an important figure for everybody to know about. And I'll just read one of my favorite quotes. That's the thing about trans joy. It can never be fully extinguished. People can try to narrow the possibilities for our lives, even end them, but our spirits will always expand to fill whatever space we are given. We will find the power in us. Beautifully written. Amazing memoir. I highly recommend it, and it's definitely one of my favorite books of the year. And that checks off the prompt to read a book by a BIPOC trans author. Hello, it's Wednesday, and today I am determined to read Meet Cute Diary. And I want to get this video up on time on Thursday because I don't have it in my schedule to post this any other time. So I am going to try to read this whole book today. I'm about 19 pages in. I've read Emery before, and their writing is very quick, so I feel like it's doable, but we'll see what happens. I will update you as I read. I am enjoying it so far. The premise of this book is we're following Noah, who runs a Tumblr page called Meet Cute Diary, and it's meet cutes for trans people, and he just tries to show that trans people deserve love and he wants to make a difference. But all of these stories are fake. He has some interactions with people, and then he thinks about a way that they could be a meet cute, and then he puts it to the Tumblr page. So this is actually set during the summer, which is interesting because I thought it would be set during the school year. So I'm interested to see how the rest of this goes. I also believe that Noah has not medically transitioned, he is socially transitioning, and he doesn't pass. So I think that's going to be interesting representation. What I love about Emery is that they always have a different perspective through their characters when it comes to trans people or just like queer people in general. I talk about Cafe con Leche a lot and how I love the way that that book shows a closeted gay character who can't come out due to their parents' rhetoric, and I think that's such important representation. I know that this is a very controversial book, and so I'm excited to finally read it, to denounce a lot of people that have problems with this book, because most of it is just transphobic, because people will read very trans books like this one, and if the character is not perfect in their eyes, they will just write them off. And if you're somebody that does that, you really need to read more trans books and not just read one perspective, and also be critically thinking while you read and reflecting on what you read, because trans people are not perfect, and it's very important to have a messy trans character, especially in YA. Like, it makes a lot of sense. So I know that Noah doesn't make wonderful decisions, but really who did when they were like 17 or 18. And it's important for that representation for trans people, especially trans kids, because like I said, trans people are not perfect. And so it's very important to be reading books about messy trans characters. Hi, I'm editing, and I wanted to add more to this part of the video. That is why it is so important to be following trans reviewers, because you're going to get a different insight. And I see this a lot, that people review trans books without having actually read a review from a trans person. And I think it is so important to be hearing our voices about these books over cis people. Just wanted to chime in and share that. That is my biggest gripe at the moment, is people can read trans books and support the authors, which I love, but I don't want it to just be during a week and then people stop doing it. If you have the means, you should be donating to GoFundMes all the time for trans people. You should always be putting your money where your mouth is, supporting people on Patreon, any sort of support monetarily, because that is what we need. But I just think reading books is not enough. You really need to be supporting trans people on the internet. And that is what my biggest gripe is I wish that bigger booktubers who do participate in the trans rights readathon and things like that would actually uplift and show support to trans people. What I've seen happen is like, the trans community will be affected in some way, and then people will be like, oh my god, support trans people, create all these fucking lists, and then the people that did create the list don't follow us, or I end up getting like an influx of people, and then they quickly unsubscribe because they realize they don't want to watch content about trans books or queer and trans books at all, which is so mind-boggling to me. But I just wish, like, not even just me, like, just, I wish trans people had more support from bigger creators and the community as a whole. Like, I know who supports me, but I also know who comments and enjoys my content. There can be so many times where people might just pick me for things to make themselves feel better, and I have dealt with that a lot of the times where there's like some tokenism, and I really wish people didn't do that and just like supported content that I make and my fellow trans creators make that isn't about being trans, because that's what people come for, unfortunately, but that's not what I want to make. I don't want to make specific videos about being trans because it's very invasive and I don't want to attract the wrong audience. Now, I am just one person and this is just my experience and what I have to say. Honestly, there could be other trans creators that may feel differently, but I just wish the community did support us more, especially, like I said, in content that's not trans-centric. I think that a lot of people could support more when it's not just a trans rights readathon and not just like when they feel like it. Supporting trans authors right now is really important. I did create a list on Bookshop with some of my favorite trans fiction and nonfiction, so I'll link that down below for you. So I do think it's important to be buying their books, especially if you can buy it from somewhere like Bookshop. They give commission to the bookshop of your choice, and they also will help support the authors because you can make commission on there. So yes, it's important to be supporting trans authors all year and reading trans authors. That's why I am highlighting this reading challenge, because if you don't read trans books year round, this is the best way to start, especially if you like bingo boards and reading challenges. This is such an easy reading challenge. There's so many recommendations. Seriously, Rhys has so much to recommend. His whole account is about book recommendations, and he has a whole spreadsheet of trans books. He is so important and I love the work that he does. I highly recommend to go and support him because I know people will be like, well, what book should I read? And I have had people say that to me before, which I think is hilarious because literally every single video of mine, you can find a trans book rec. And like I said, I don't want to make a specific video because I don't want to attract the wrong audience. But yeah, I just think we need more support, especially as creators. A lot of people have been saying to me like, oh, like I feel like I don't get the engagement. I feel like people don't support me enough. And that sucks. So like, hey, if we could change that, that would be amazing. I would like more support for everybody. It sucks when you see people only supporting in a certain time. Trust me, through my like last 4 years or so of being out as a trans man, I have seen a lot of things. That is my little spiel, I guess. And I'm going to get into Meet Cute Diary, and I will update you when I have more to update. Hello, it's Thursday, the day this video was scheduled to go up, but I'm still reading. I'm 50% into Meet Cute Diary, so I figured I would chat with you. I'm really enjoying it. Noah is insufferable, and I understand where people are coming from, so I'm really interested to see how he is going to develop and learn from a lot of his behavior. It's reminding me a lot of my favorite Mason Deaver, the Feeling of Falling in Love. The main character in that book, Neil, was similar, where he just made a lot of bad decisions and was kind of an asshole. Then throughout the course of the book, you learn why he acted like that. And I feel like we're kind of getting that here, but I like how we're getting Noah's thoughts, and then as the reader, and I feel like too, like as an adult reading a YA, you're seeing a lot of things that are going on, specifically his relationship with this older boy, Drew, who he met, who he's fake dating to keep up his facade about the Meet Cute Diary being real, even though it's fake. Now, something happened where he has a new job. His brother ended up getting him a summer job at a camp, and so Noah is with this person, Devin, who is non-binary. And at the point in the book, they changed their pronouns to they, them. And I'm just really loving Devin as a character because it is so important to show all aspects of trans people because we are not a monolith. And so what I'm loving about Devin representation wise is they are AMAB, which is very rare to see in any trans representation. AFAB people are more represented, and especially when somebody's non-binary, it's usually AFAB. So seeing AMAB representation is huge, especially in a YA, and the characters changing their pronouns. That is so huge. I just love that we're learning through these characters about how every trans person is different, and I'm interested to see how Devin's going to shape more of Noah's thoughts, because Noah is just straight up an asshole. He has kind of mooched off of his parents. At the beginning of the book, his credit card gets declined, and he calls his parents and he's like, hey, what happened? And they tell him he has to get a job. And he is so upset about this. And he has never really had to get a job. I mean, he's 16. I will say, though, I find it so funny because obviously this is fiction, but I'm like, damn, it does show how it's not that easy to get a job, but it feels like, obviously for the point of the plot, but I'm like, wow, this was a little bit too easy for him. I will say that's the only little critique I have is like, everything just feels a little too perfect. Like, we find out some things about Devin that connect to Noah from, like, the previous chapters, and I'm like, this just feels too kismet, and I wish that there was a little bit more of things, like, not going Noah's way. I understand to prolong the plot, but I do wish there was some things where it didn't feel like Noah walks right into something. But so far, I'm really enjoying this. I have under 200 pages to go, so I still have a little bit left of the book, but I just wanted to pop in because I am really enjoying this. I think it's just a really wholesome read for trans people. Like, it's not triggering at all. It's important and it just shows a trans character screwing up, and I think that that is so important. I have said that all throughout this video, is we need more of that representation and for people to understand why it's important to acknowledge the reasoning behind a frustrating character. And I feel like this for every kind of situation when it comes to books, trans and marginalized characters. It's important to acknowledge that it's good to have a messy character who is not perfect, especially in YA, because like I've already said, when you were a teenager, you were probably insufferable and made a lot of bad decisions, and it's very important for especially people of color because Noah is half white and Chinese and half Afro-Caribbean, and it's very important to see those characters not look perfect and be screwing up a lot. I just enjoy that you can kind of see from the outside that there are things going on. Specifically, Noah's friend, Becca, she's really non-existent, and you can kind of see that, like, she's distancing herself from Noah, but he's not realizing. And so I'm interested to see what's going to happen with their friendship specifically, because they are said to be best friends and she is MIA. But you can definitely see that, like, Noah's not really picking up on a lot of things that she's saying, and she's trying to rein him in because he just thinks that there is a whole method to a meet cute and romance, and she's like, dude, dial it down. You're so wrong. So I'm really interested to see how the rest of the book plays out. And again, it's very important to have messy characters because in reality, nobody is perfect. And especially in YA, teenagers are going to make bad decisions. So I'm going to keep reading and I will update you once I've finished. Oh my god, this is screwing me up. Oh my god. There's just something about trans books that they just hit different. Oh my god, I'm in tears. I don't think you can really tell, but oh my god. Hi, it's Friday. This vlog is late. Again, of course. What else is new with me? I just finished up Meet Cute Diary. I'm on sprints, so you might see that in the background. But I really enjoyed this, and it's making me side-eye a lot of people that had issues with this, cis people in particular. This was so good. I really enjoyed it. I just love Emery Lee. Her writing is so good, her characters work, and all of E's books I love. And of course now I'm sad because I don't have anything else to read from M. So like, E does have 2 books coming out. I believe one is already out, and then her adult book is coming out as well, so I'll have links down below. I really enjoyed this. You know I love messy characters, but I just kept reading this and thinking about how important it is for trans kids to be able to read a book like this and see themselves represented through Noah. I loved the character development at the end and Noah just learning how he fucked up and a lot of things he thought he knew, and kind of learns more about himself. I really loved Devin. Honestly, I think that he's one of my favorite characters, and I really liked how we got to see Devin change air pronouns a lot and also just talk about neo pronouns, and I think that's so important also for teens to read this, and maybe they are like Devin where they don't feel like the binary pronouns or even they them work for them, and it might be their first introduction to neo pronouns. As I've said before, Devin changes air pronouns a lot in this book, and I just like how chill everybody was. Like, there's not a lot of transphobia, which is so nice. This book is clearly written for trans people, and I just loved how accepting everybody was. There is like a minor instance of transphobia, but for the most part, everybody just accepts things. And I like too that neo-pronouns were so normalized that nobody was up in arms about it or anything. Everybody just accepted that that was the pronoun and you were done. There was really nothing too triggering. There are panic attacks on page. The author does have content warnings on their website, so I'm going to put that on the screen for you. But I really don't have too much more to say about this. I just really enjoyed it. I loved Noah and his growth. At the end, he has changed in some way, but he's still a teenager and he's still going to make mistakes, and I don't think he's perfect at the end. I just really enjoyed this, and sometimes when the world is bleak, it's really important to have books like this. And I've been thinking about how a lot of people shit on YA, which makes me really annoyed because we're visitors in YA and middle grade stories as adults, and I think it's very privileged to say that you hate YA or you don't read YA because there are stories like this that are so important. Queer YA middle grade especially heal my inner child, and I never had books like this, and so that's why I read a lot of YA, because honestly, YA is one of the most diverse demographics. Adult is still getting there, but if you want diversity, YA has it, and I think it's a disservice to say that YA shouldn't be read by adults and things like that, because it's so important, especially to support the authors who are writing these stories. I think it is such a disservice to not read YA as an adult, because obviously we're visitors and we're not gonna have the same experiences, but the stories are so important to be reading. And if we want to support trans authors, we have to support them in any way. So that is the vlog. Thank you so much for watching. If you stayed until the end, give this video a like and leave a comment. It really helps me out to boost this video and for more people to know that I'm here. If you're new here, hi, I'm Alex. I'm a trans man, and I love to shout about trans books on the internet. So if you're interested in that, feel free to hit subscribe. If you would like to support me further, I have a Patreon. Thank you to my top patrons for their continuous support. I share a bunch of exclusive content on there, and I am going to be announcing something in April, so you might want to become a free member because you will get to know once that is out. I can't wait to finally announce it, so the link is down below. If you'd like to watch more, I'll link a video here and you can subscribe here. Bye.